Welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart and we're here for build 21 of the freight station. We're coming to a close here soon on this building, so stay tuned. Okay, so in this part of the freight station, we have those exposed decks out there on the end that still need roofs put over them, and they don't line up, the roof lines and everything, with the roof that was on the building, but they do attach to either end of that expansion that we put on the roof over the front of the railroad side deck. Excuse me, a little tongue-tied here this evening for some reason. But in any case, so we have to build all those supports that hold up that roof, and they're a different build than what we've done with other supports and things like that. So it'll be a how-to on how to do that, and then put the roofing on it once we get a roof on that, to start all the shingling and all that on the rest of the house as well. It's just a very slow process, so I'm going to be working on some other things as I go through this and do that. And let's just jump into this and get some more of this accomplished. Now, I don't have a whole lot of references as to the way this was actually built. I have this picture here which kind of shows what's going on underneath, but it's just not a very good photograph. And then I have this one which just basically shows part of the overhang and where it overlapped this end of this building. And that's not a lot of information to go on. The original blueprint drawing for these, it was not built this way. This is what was on the original drawing, but it was definitely not built this way. And I pulled up that one photograph that does show some of what's going on underneath, and I tried to use some photo editing stuff to enhance this to where I could really see more of what's going on. But basically I can tell there's a center post and there's arms that come out to reach the sides. So I'm going to use those basics and make this up. So, I draw all the dimensions and how the height and the width and the angles and everything on the roof and the way I want it. And then I come back and draw on the paper all the members that I need to support the roof to those dimensions. And this has a center post. It has two arms that come out to support a center member. So then I come back and just cut all the posts to the height of what I figured out on that drawing, and I get all those cut. Now remember, there's a short platform at the far end, so I'm cutting those for that one too. Then I'm cutting the cross members that come out from that at a T, and then the brace arms that come up and support those outward arms. And then I glue a piece of, I tape down a piece of glass to the top of that drawing, because I'm going to use it as a template to build all these. And I don't want to glue it on top of the paper, because it'd just be a nightmare to get some separation in it. And I do have some different thicknesses of wood I'm using here, so I'm using some supports underneath that one piece there on either side. But basically I just come back and start gluing all these main members together. And I let them set up for a while and let the glue set up really well, and then I come back and tape all those to one of my paint boards, and I just go out with a rattle can and paint them all black, and then I turn them over and do the other side as well. So then we have all our main supports together that'll support the roof itself and the posts to put in. Now I measured on the platform exactly where I want all these to go, and I just put one at either end and one in the middle to give me some support to put the rest of them in. Then I still have a lot of these real long pieces that I used on that other platform roof, and I've got a bunch of them, so I take one and I go ahead and cut the top one to go across those three posts that I've already glued in. And this will give me some support to help me glue all the others in place as well. And every little third hand you can come up with is good. And I use a square and make sure everything's square and straight up and down, and angles are all right on everything as I'm setting all these up. But you know, I got to looking at this and it was just way too many and too busy. So what I did was come back, instead of every 10 feet, I took some out and repositioned a few of them to where I had them every 16 foot on center. And I like the looks of this better. It's just not as busy, and this would give, in real life, the support that this roof needs anyway. Then I put the angles up from the top down, and that gives me the place where these other two cross members will come in. And then I start putting all the rest of these angle rafters into place. And I'm just doing every other one to start with because my fat fingers will get in the way. And then once the glue's set up on those and I don't have to worry about knocking them out of place, I come back and put the ones in between and finish the first side. And I just continue that on with the second side. Here you can see there's still some missing where I haven't quite finished them, and then I come back with the second batch of that and get all those finished as well. And this is a nice looking support system for this roof. Now everything's not perfect on this, but once I get roof material on it, you're really not going to notice the imperfections that much anyway. So I go ahead and cut out on my for sale sign these long strips after I measure them for the roof, and take them outside and rattle can and paint them black for the underside, because I don't want to have to go under there and paint the bottom of these. And then I come back and glue them into place. And I hadn't cut these quite wide enough, so I'm going to have to deal with that, but I didn't want to go out and waste more plastic to cut more. So I just cut this real long piece of paper strip and I fold it in half, and it's just long enough to come down and meet the plastic on either side, and then I can just glue it across the top of that roof, and it'll give me the support that I need to do the roofing material on top of that. So that'll all be good, and it'll work well for what I need to do. Then I need to just continue on and finish the other end just the same. I put one of those posts in place, and I glue a top member to attaches to the old roof. I had to do a cross member between one of the old posts and the building to get supports for these two other cross members. And then it gives me a place to run all my angle boards down to, and I start putting them in place. And I do them the same way as I did the other end, half of them, and then come back and do the ones in between. And then, I go ahead and cut plastic pieces and spray paint them black underneath and add them to the roof just the same as I did the other end. And then I put a paper strip across the top of this one as well, because these black pieces were actually leftover pieces cut off the other end. So I had that same gap in the top that I had to come back and bridge with paper. But, that'll give me a good enough support to put shingles on, so I'm not really worried about that. Now I'm going to do quite a little bit of a comparison here. I have some of these Jordan old kits for baggage wagons. I've never tried to put these together. I've done a lot of Jordan kits. And these they have pretty good directions with them, but the parts are just, extremely small and tiny. And some of the plastic parts on this kit, you have to bend them to make the plastic work for what you want it to do. And I just found that it's bending it is not a good idea. So what I did was come back and cut the parts and actually glue them back together in the shape that they need to be, rather than trying to bend this very fragile plastic. But overall, the Jordan kit goes together really well. It's nice to scale. The detail as well, for as tiny as it is, it's really, incredible pair of wagons in this, and you can still find these at shows, even though Jordan isn't producing these anymore. But I also have some Teachy kits too, and basically, when they're finished, they look about the same. But there's some things I like better about one than the other. I mean, the Teachy parts, they're always molded really well, but the parts that I had to cut apart and reglue on the other one come molded in separate parts with the Teachy kit, so I didn't have to cut them apart. I could just take these parts and glue them together. Now for the rear bracing for the rear wheels, in the Teachy they have wire, and you have to bend the wire and cut it to shape where it's plastic with the Jordan kits and pre-molded, so it's just an extra step you have to go to. I'm not sure one's any better than the other. I like them both. Now for other scenery details around this, I have a bunch of HO scale military stuff, and all these crates came with those, so I'm just putting some light tan paint on it and come back and dry brushing some tans and other colors across the tops of them, and just kind of giving them, you know, a basic crate look. I'm not going into a whole lot of effort in doing these, but I think they'll look good on the platform. And I'm just looking through my stuff to find other stuff. These wooden crates are bigger wooden crates that I made years ago. They're not extremely fine, but these are easy to make just out of balsa wood with some trim on them and a few decals put on them for labels. Now this platform also received a lot of mail for the post office up the hill, so I have these postal bags. And these feed sacks, these I just made these myself out of molding clay and baked them and put a bunch of them together to form these pallets of feed sacks or whatever that you want them to be. And in my stuff I have tons of 55-gallon drums too, so I'm going to come back and paint these that I found and add them onto the platform. There's a few odds and ends here, a pallet and some other small crates that are different from the other ones that I had, and I figured, well, why not throw them on there for a little detail as well. There's some milk cans and, you know, various things that I'm using for detail along this, hand carts, you know, a lot of different things. The wooden barrels, you know, back in the days that I modeled, there weren't so many of the metal 55-gallon drums. There was more of these wooden barrels, and everything from lard to all kinds of stuff came in them. And you can't do any better at adding life to a scene than adding people or cats, dogs, or anything that's actually alive. And you know, there would have been a lot of people coming and going from this, so a few vehicles that could be loaded or unloaded with goods coming in and out of the freight station is another thing. You know, I was looking through all my signs and I found these angled warning things that I think would be good on the back corners of the brick building. I found this Uncle Sam Want poster. You know, I'm going to add it on that. I don't want to put a lot of decals and stuff like on, but I just thought this would add some interesting detail. I'm just going to give you a couple of different pans of the building. This one's kind of a high angle. You can see this end fairly well with it, and you know, it's the roofs. I'm going to have to spend a lot of time coming back and do shingles. This is going to take a whole lot of time to put the shingles on this roof. But basically, this is how the building would be, you know, other than the shingles finished. And, you know, so all the detail stuff isn't glued into place. Well, the end of the building is. I've still got people to add to this, and some other fine detail. And let me get the light moved down here where you can see it a little better. But you know, it just tons of detail. You know, a freight station in an active town like this would just always have had a ton of stuff coming and going from the building. So there would have been all kinds of goods, you know, just coming and going. So there would have been just tons and tons of stuff. So maybe even more than this, I don't know. But you get the idea. It's just, you know, it just adds a whole lot more life to it if you can add all this stuff into the building. So there you have what I'm going to consider to be the last video in the freight house. I am going to continue to work on the shingles and getting the roof done, but it makes no sense in just putting an episode up there of me shingling a roof. These are all just made with tape and put on there, and then you know, eventually I'll come back and paint them, and you know, maybe do a little weathering on them as well. But anyway, that's something simple, and I've done that in several of my videos, and we'll continue to do that type of shingling on other videos in the future as well. So it's not something that's that hard to do. It's really time consuming, and you know, I'm not pleased with the tape and what's going on with it, but the rest of the building turned out really well. I think even the roof will look good once it's painted and everything. It won't look as much like the slate roof that was on it, but you know, I think it'll look good. It had regular shingles on it later in life, just not the time period that I modeled. So in any case, thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. We went into a little bit of scenery on this one, a little bit of detail work. That's where all the life comes to all your structures in your model railroad. The more of this little stuff you can add into any of your scenes, the more lifelike it'll be. Actually adding more weathering to everything. I don't do a whole lot of weathering on my structures at this point. I'll probably come back before I ever install them on layout and do some chalks and some various things to kind of tone down the newest look of the buildings. Most of these look like they're fairly new when I build them. And I just don't go into that much weathering right now. Eventually I'll come back and do some of that. Some of the weathering is easier to do as you're building your structures than the way I'm doing it, but it can be done either way. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed this building. It's a nice building. It really replicates what was there in real life. It's kind of nice to see the sheds and the covers of the platforms and all that type of thing out there as well. These didn't exist in the most of your all's time period, but early on those were there, and I like the looks of them over the platform, and I think it makes the building look a whole lot better. So in any case, thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. Like I said, I do appreciate you watching my videos. I hope you're learning something, like I said in some other videos, even if it's how not to do something. Everybody has their own way of doing things, and one way isn't necessarily right and another way is wrong. Whatever works for you works. It's your model railroad, and when you get done, if it's a good looking building, who cares how you did it, as long as what you did works for you. A lot of people have different techniques and ways of doing things, and none of them are right or wrong. If they work, they work. So anyway, come back and scratch and build some buildings through this winter, and hone your craft and play with your model trains, and just enjoy the hobby, and happy model railroading.